So we are back with one of these late night ramblings. After much of these sort of ramblings, got a lot of we discussed some interesting topics. We discussed DMT and gin. that,
Remember that.
that was a very good topic. What else did we discuss? Manliness, the death of manliness, and these things. You went into your you know your comfortable mode where tiredness and lack of sleep and all these things, they bring out the best of you. So after a long day, I thought I'd ask you, do you think Muslims think in a very small, petty way? Do you think thinking big, having grand goals, having hope that actually we can achieve a lot in our short lives is missing? And Muslims, in fact, even in the discourse and what we were talking about earlier, they get involved in pettiness and small issues and what about this and what about that, as opposed to looking at the grand picture and what we can do with our lives.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that all religions suffer from. And it's something that historians term as narcissism of small difference.
Narcissism is a small difference.
Yeah. It's like
Interesting.
you're more likely to bicker with someone who's got small differences with you than you are with someone with much bigger differences, because you feel like they're taking something from you that is yours. So we see this intra-sectarian kind of divisions. So yeah, no doubt we can squabble in that manner and not look at the bigger picture, what we are actually trying to achieve in this country or in the West or in the world. And that's something which requires some level of insight, some level of sapience.
Well, the way I was thinking about it is we, in terms of our goals and ambitions and what we want to do, take something like social media, right? When Muslims complain we are being misrepresented in the media, or this is happening and that's happening, the most powerful form of media today is social media. It's better than conventional media, press, all these types of things, even Hollywood and, these massive types of films. Social influencers, right? And the impact they have on people's lives. And look, here, we can have this interesting discussion about this. We can actually argue that they are more talented than your average Hollywood actor. I'll give you some evidence for this, right? So take any social influencer online, what's his name? Russell Brand, right? Someone like him. That, even though he started off with conventional, he was on these mainstream sort of things, he has to put out regular content, the camera quality and all those types of things. It's not like the same as what you have in Hollywood or these TV studios. And when it comes to these actors, they're not producing content all the time. It's not regular. It's not all the time. It's not the interaction with the audience isn't as much. So these social influencers, the impact that they have is huge, unprecedented in terms of media, right? So when Muslims are complaining, why isn't this happening or why isn't that happening? Well, why aren't we using these tools? Why aren't we supporting that the people that are on these particular type of tools? Why aren't we coming up with strategies like other people are? Like, for example, if there's Islamophobes who do this thing, they gather together and they mass report innocent people, innocent brothers and sisters, to get them, cancelled and this type of thing. Like, we're not going to get together to do bad things, right? But what I mean is, we don't think in that grand way. What can we do? What are the new possibilities which are available? For example, take Mandarin, right? How many dawah materials exist in Mandarin? And in fact, religion is banned to be propagated in China. But what you could do is actually you could produce videos about God's existence, about the meaning of life, and these things.
They censor it, don't they?
Well, many people use VPNs and they access these things, right? But what I'm trying to get to is that there's always huge amounts of things that this ummah can be involved in. Instead, they're getting involved in, sadly, mediocreistan, right? They're getting involved in, like you said, the
narcissism of small difference.
Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, man. And the thing that made Islam successful in the first instance was having this kind of big picture attitude. Yeah. One athar which really is interesting is that of Umar ibn Khattab, where he tells people to teach their children how to horse ride, how to do archery, and how to swim. But swimming is not something which is associated with people who live necessarily in Mecca and Medina, because there's no sea there.
Yeah.
But it was his foresight and his forward thinking
Yes.
that made him think, you know what, Islam is going to reach the places where there is going to be seas, and therefore teach your children how to swim from now, so that it can deal with life's new challenges. That made him give that advice in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's the same man, obviously, that Islam spread exponentially under. It's no coincidence, therefore, that we, as Muslim people, need to start thinking about using all that is to our disposal, you know, if we want to get results like Omar. You know, we need to think about the big picture. We need to think about what can we use to our advantage. What are our objectives? It's very simple. We're trying to spread Islam. We're trying to make a rational case for Islam. We're trying to show the people the truth of Islam. We're trying to make an argument for Islam. How best can we do this? How best can we make these objectives met?
Exactly.
And that's it.
And you know, if your brain is tuned for that kind of thinking, right, then you'll come up with results like that. Just for example, an idea which I was thinking about, which I'm hoping for, right? So I was trying to get my daughters to think about virology, right? And my daughters are like 4 and 6, they're small. But the reason why is because if you look at coronavirus, the most valuable people alive today are not the economists, not the whatever. It's the people who study virology, the virologists who know how to deal with pandemics, who can give you advice. Pandemics actually are going to be coming regularly. This is just part and parcel of human history. We forget that actually every couple of decades there is a pandemic. Imagine if you can tell your children, do you know what? And Allah rewards you according to your intention. You teach your children, right, I want you to be a virologist, right? Why? Because there is going to be a future pandemic like we've had in the past. Imagine if it's the Muslim who actually is at the forefront of helping saving the lives of millions of people, and then actually afterwards says, well, do you know what Islam says? You save the life of one, you save the lives of many. You know, this is just one idea I'm talking about. But this type of huge thinking, right, this type of big thinking, I believe is ultimately linked to the way that you think about Allah. Because if your view of Allah is negative, if you have negative thoughts about Allah, you will actually have petty thinking in your day-to-day life. But if you think highly of Allah, you will actually think of high ambitions. You think Allah will make this happen. This is possible. That's possible. You know, there are amazing instances in the history of this ummah where people who come from very humble backgrounds, they've changed societies. And yet you find people with a lot of resources who have excuse-itis, right? David Schwartz, he's got this amazing book called The Magic of Thinking Big. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's a great book, right? It's from 1960s or you know, it's quite old, but it's very, very good. 50s or 60s, decades old. In that book, he talks about how people come up with excuses. Oh, I'm too old, or I don't have enough knowledge, or so on and so forth. The fact is, thinking big is something which you need to basically destroy this idea of excuses. I don't have enough resources, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, or I need I need people to help me. The fact is, if you have a grand vision for Islam, if you have a grand vision to change the perception of Islam, you have so many possibilities, especially in the world of social media, that you can change the lives of millions of people, right? And it's just about getting your brain to think in that particular way, right? I mean, going back a few years, I remember I was in the office and Hamza WhatsApped me, and I was sitting, Hamza used to sit in that corner, I used to sit here. He sent me a video, and the video was some random guy, right? And this is back in, I think it was 2016. I think it was 2016 or 15. And he said, check out this guy. Clicked on the video, right? And it was you, when you were basically at this thing called Sirat Education, you're making some video. He said, tell me about this guy. Tell me about, not this guy, but tell me about what he said here, yeah? And that was when you were like teaching people Arabic, and then afterwards you decided to do this video about atheism, and you mentioned evolution. But then it went into, okay, I don't want to be Sirat, just don't want to focus on the Arabic and just on the argumentation. Actually, to go to the park to do these types of things, and then over a period of time, there's been significant number of people who've benefited, right? So it's about thinking big. How can we inspire others to do that as well? What advice can you give others to have that? Because I'm sure you know this. There's a big price when you do these types of things, right? There's a price on the strain mentally, on the attacks that you get, on the way that you have to spend your time and sacrifice the time for your family and other things in order to get these things done. But somebody has to make those sacrifices. And we're not saying everyone has to be a public speaker, but some people are going to have to do grand things, get involved in orphan projects, or do this or do that. What is required in order to make those sacrifices to do those things? What advice would you give?
Resolve. I think the main thing is you need to have persistence, resolve, but you have to have objectives. You have to have objectives and a plan. And these are the two things you need to have. You know, things don't come from, you know, just randomly like this. They require conscientious effort over a long space of time. And I personally believe that consistency is key. A plan is what everybody needs. I personally believe if you don't have a plan, you don't have a life. It's really as simple as that. If you plan to fail, if you fail to plan to fail. Put it that way. If you fail to plan to fail. You know? And I'll say to you that you got to think about what you want to be good in life in. Okay, you have to have enough reason. As Nietzsche said, if you have a why, almost any how is possible. When you have a why, number one, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to be this? Why do I think this is important? You have to sit with yourself and really, then you ask yourself a second question. What can I contribute that 99% of the population can't?
Don't reinvent the wheel, basically.
Yeah, no, with this one, I'll tell you what I mean. Like right now, I'm speaking to you in English. The odds are that you know how to speak English because you're listening to this in English. Not only am I speaking to you in English, I'm speaking to you in the British accent. I was on the plane one time. I downloaded some videos to watch, like educational videos of some professors and stuff like that. But they were from India. And they were saying some amazing things. And I was thinking, wow, why has this only got 200 views? This man's making lots of good points. And I thought to myself, the reason why is because of his accent. Well, that's one of the reasons why. Having the British accent is an advantage that separates you from 99% of the world's population. Having a British accent and spoken English can be better than having a PhD from Calcutta University, right? Because already you've been able to get through to certain people that those would not be able to get through to. Number one, right? So you have to know your strengths. You have to really do a self-assessment and manage what your strengths are, because I feel like people don't even know what their strengths are. There's a very famous story of like elephant, a circus elephant, which when it was younger, when it was in the circus, when the baby elephant is in the circus, they put like his foot on like a pole or something like that. So it can't obviously get out of the position that it's in. Yeah. But when it gets so huge, like, you know, some 3-4 years after, 5 years after, there's a huge elephant, they put the same chain on the leg of the elephant and they put it on the pole, and it has the same effect. Yeah.
It mentally is constrained.
Because he thinks that, or the elephant thinks that, well, I've never been able to break through from this. Even though that elephant will smash that pole if the elephant knew its own strength.
Yeah.
The Muslims are just like the elephant. We are huge. We are the giant. Why do you think the Americans spend so much money on us? Why do you think they make it a policy to come into our countries all the time? Why do you think they make it a policy to talk about clash of civilizations and make us the antagonist? Why do you think that it's about terrorism in Islam now, after the Cold War? The reason why is actually what Samuel P. Huntington diagnosed in the first instance, that we are the most credible threat to the American hegemonic power. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid to wake up the sleeping giant of Islam. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't realize our own strength. Muslims in the West have very many strengths that Muslims elsewhere don't have. And even if you're not in the West, you might have strengths that us in the West don't have.
For example, you were speaking in the office about the Urdu language
Yes.
and the power of it, and the huge social, the huge societies that can be reached.
I
if
said
someone,
this.
yeah.
I was mentioning to like Adnan Rashid and others that can speak fluent Urdu, that if I were you, I'd have an output in the Urdu language, because a lot of what you need to say needs to be said in that language. The Urdu language is very close to Hindi. It's very close to other languages. Question is, how many millions of people can you get through with Urdu? Why are you not using this strength?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't get it. For me, I've never understood. If you have a strength, you must use it. It's a manner for you to actually. Allah has given it to you for a reason. So the first thing is, before getting anything new, you have to decide what you already have. Okay, and this actually can be sometimes a lack of gratitude, that we don't even recognize our own strength. Lack of gratitude disguised as humility, fake humility. Oh, I'm not really this and that. You're just ungrateful, to be honest, because Allah has given you language. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. What does that mean? As for the favors of Allah, then speak about them. People forget sometimes that the Quran tells us to speak about what favors Allah has given to him or her, that person. And when the person is reminded of those favors by other people, they play the humble card as if they're doing themselves a favor by protecting themselves from arrogance. They're actually not protecting themselves from arrogance, but in many cases what they're doing is they're being an ingrate. They're not doing فَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. They're not speaking about, or they don't even acknowledge it to themselves, let alone to other people. So for example, if you are bilingual, if you know how to speak English, if you can speak a certain dialect in English, if you have certain specialist knowledge in subjects, if you are someone who, for example, has certain experience in a sector, whatever that sector may be, if you have a certain experience in relationships, if you have certain life experience, if you are street smart, if you came off the streets, if you are a gangster, wherever you are, all of that can be seen as advantageous. But you just need to know how to mobilize that and weaponize that, for an objective that you need to fulfill, which is going to be an Islamic objective. So the first thing is self-assessment. What are your strengths? And likewise, what are your weaknesses? What are the things that could get you in trouble? What are the things that you need to know? Then make a plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. When you make a plan that is going to be connected with your objectives, which if you have a why anyhow as possible, you're going to need to have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan and a 15-year plan. You need to have a proper plan, okay, such that when you finish in 10, 15 years, whatever it is you want to finish, whether it's memorize the Quran from a religious perspective, or finish a degree from a secular perspective, or go through whatever it is, martial arts, or whatever, like sports, football, training, I don't know what you guys do. Whatever plan you have in life and you stick to it, that is the most important thing, that consistency, right? And then afterwards, then you have the output. And your output is going to be better than 99% of the population, because you spent 10 years doing it. And you spend 10 years doing something, and another person spends 10 minutes doing something, no matter, even if they've been given all the biological advantages over you and all the money advantages over you, you'll beat them. And that's the reality of the situation, and that's what you need to do. So I feel like not only do we need to plan big, but we need to self-assess, and we need to be consistent with what we do.
Definitely. And I think a good part of this, and I think it's important to bring in this discussion, you go gung-ho, you go straight forward, but then when you're doing that, you get obstacles, you get problems, you get challenges, you get attacks, you get you go through pain. You go through pain, right? You go through difficulties.
Yeah.
So I also wanted your sort of take to give to the viewers on this, that in your journey as well, right? you went through a lot of difficulties, starting off with, I remember, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, the financial difficulty of then losing the job that unfairly, being singled out, and all those types of I mean, that's just my perception, right? I'm not sure what your views are, but for example, certain things, okay, you did this, okay, you lost your job here. Then also, a lot of jealousy, right? And a lot of attacks, and a lot of people who nitpick. This particular person did this, but why did they do this? What? And sometimes when I look at these comments and look at these videos and look at certain things, I think to myself, if a person is doing some good, right, being corrected is a brilliant thing. No Muslim should say, "Why are you correcting me?" Everyone should say, "You're fine to correct me." But if somebody is in the trenches trying to deal with a obstacle of Islam, a barrier of Islam, and trying to blast through, and at that time you're trying to say your button is dusty, or you're trying to just bring in a point at the wrong time, it just shows a lack of wisdom. It shows a lack of, in fact, a lack of awareness, mental awareness of what the context is and what is going on. So there's a lot of these personal struggles. Some struggles are hidden, some struggles are more public. How do you, with that vision, which what you're trying to achieve, and then you get so many of these troubles, how do you maintain that consistency and sabr to be steadfast on your goals?
I have a plan. I have a diary, and in that diary, I have weekly and monthly targets and daily targets. So, in my diary, I have literally, okay, I know that in a week I need to do this many times. I need to do that many times. I need to do this in the day. And today I have to do this many times. For example, I have to do my azkar in the morning and the evening. I have to read X amount of Quran a day. I have to go to the gym at least two to three times a week. I have to do some kind of cardio, martial arts at least 2-3 times a week. I have to intake, and this is my policy anyway, personally. I have to intake at least 5 times more knowledge than I'm outputting. So I've got a 5-to-1 ratio. I've always had this ratio. I've had it since I was 17. So my ratio is like, if I want to be an educator, which is what I am in a sense, yeah, I have to be taking in 5 times more knowledge than I'm putting out. So for example, if I do dawah, and I do probably 5 hours of dawah a week, I have to do 25 hours of ilm a week, whatever that ilm may be, whether it's secular knowledge or Islamic or a combination of both. So all of these things are my targets. And I have as I say, 5-year targets. So in 5 years, I have to do X, Y, Z, secular knowledge, this, Islamic knowledge, this. I have to go through this book and that book or whatever. And whether it's mind, body, and soul, it's an easy way of breaking it down. I have to do this for the body, I have to do this for the mind, I have to do this for the soul. And also, very importantly, I have to do this for the family. So I have output for the family. The durus I have with my children, the output I have with my children, the kind of things that I do for my children outside of that, like sports. I have to think about their progress. I have to think about the immediate family. I have to think about the extended family. And so these are all my output objectives. Now I have to think to myself, however I'm feeling, because I realize emotions are very tumultuous, very volatile, and you can't control how you feel. That's one of the things you can't actually control a lot of the time. So you'll have times in your life where things get very difficult, but actually what acts as an anchor for me are my daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly objectives. And I literally look at my diary and I have a tally chart of how many things I've done for each day. And I hold myself to account. Have I been productive enough? Just as I would have when I actually used to work in companies where there were targets, where we used to have meetings almost every week and talk about if we met the target. So why is that the case when we're profit maximizing, but we're not maximizing when it comes to life? So I feel like a lot of what I learned in the corporate environment, when I used to work in the corporate environment as an account manager, I was a stockbroker, whatever, I actually implemented that in my life. And I feel like, to be honest, that's one of the greatest things, because you will feel 1,000 different things throughout your years and months and years. But if you have a plan, then you'll look back and say, look, I've established this, I've achieved this, and despite how I felt, it doesn't matter. The difference between success and failures, in my view, successful people can battle through whatever they feel and get things done. And failures don't. They don't know how to do that.
So I think that's a very important point you raised there. So as human beings, we're always trying to manage our state. You know, and one of the things the Quran does is it helps you put yourself in a positive state, in an existential state, where you are more fine-tuned towards being productive. However, like you said, you get a left hook in life, you get a red herring, you get a purple cow that comes and barges at you. In essence, what you're saying is you can't just wait for motivation. You can't wait for feeling happy. You can't wait for, okay, my mood's down, I can't do this. So the actions are consistent regardless of how you feel.
Like that is a good point. I was just speaking today, about when, for example, I've gained a lot of weight recently, yeah. So I need some kind of motivation to lose it, because sometimes I do feel like I need to have an external motivation. So what I used to do back in the day, I used to just do like there's a competition, there's like a grappling competition in 2 weeks' time. I can get fit enough, and when I'm getting fit, I'll lose a bit of weight. In 1 year, I did like 10 grappling whatever it may have been. Like, just for example, deadlines are very, very important here. When I used to go to university as an undergraduate, they worked good. Like, okay, I wouldn't read these books had I not had a deadline. I wouldn't write these words if I didn't have a deadline. So setting for yourself deadlines, whether you set them for yourself or you allow third parties to set them for you, is a great thing. Okay, and I feel like we need to re-establish motivation so much. And I think motivation is one of the biggest blessings that Allah gives us. But we don't realize that, because the difference between, once again, success and failure is just a matter of motivation. What some have referred to as second order volition. This idea that you can actually start to think about, I want to want something. I want to be X. I want to be Z, Y, whatever it is. Having that want to want is sometimes more important than actually doing what it is to achieve that. Because if you don't have that, you can't even start on your journey in the first place. Motivation is the foundation for everything. So you have to sit down and introspect. And once again, it goes back to purpose. And if you have a solid purpose of life, then all of these things will fall into place. But if you don't have a solid purpose of life, none of it will. If you have a solid purpose of life, everything will be meaningful. Pain will be meaningful. Cutting your hair will be meaningful. Eating chicken will be meaningful. Sleeping and waking up will be meaningful. Brushing your teeth will be meaningful. Having a shower will be meaningful. Speaking to your friends will be meaningful, because you have something in Islamic terminology which is referred to as ihtisab, which basically, like, you are intending now to do something for the sake of God.
Yeah.
If you tweak your intentions, then you can make everything in your life meaningful, and that is what differentiates us from them.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point to end upon. The beauty of Islam is, like you said, the intention. Your entire worldview can be colored by that. So, Jazakallah khair. I think that's very good food for thought for people to take away. And until next time that we have this late night discussion, Assalamu alaikum.